Welcome to Inside Coverage, where we cover the how and the why of all things going on in the NFL. It's usually a testy Tuesday where somebody argues with Frank, and we decided that finally we were tired of Frank trying to win arguments, so we'd bring in somebody bigger than Frank, somebody, maybe more bald than Frank, but definitely more beautiful than Frank, our buddy Mike Golic Jr. Coming in and subbing in with us, hanging out. Gojo, you can obviously check out, you see behind him on Golic and Golic on FanDuel. Mike, welcome to Testy Tuesdays. You ready to battle?
I'm feeling great right now. I am happy to be in the company of one of my proud bald brothers here. So, Frank, great to be with you. Jason, your hair looks ridiculous. I'm excited to talk ball with you guys today.
Yeah, this has got to go, Fitz. Like, if you're going to be part of the show, I mean, it's like, remember, like the old WWE, I know you'll get this, the old WWE, the shave your head match or whatever, you lose, yeah. Brutus the Barber's going to come in. That should have been you before the show, basically.
Yeah, well, okay, you guys say that now, but both of you reacted, I'd say less than kindly when I shaved my head a few months ago. Both of you were like, oh, like I think there was some combination of, are you sick? Are you going through something? Do you need a hug?
Like, I
don't
think either of you. Only certain guys could pull off this look. Me and Gojo got it rocking. So hey, it just is what it is.
I don't know how I feel about that. I'd say I was pretty damn intimidating. Okay. Well, you know what else is intimidating? A slow news day. That's right. It's another slow news day. It's the middle of the off season, and this is going to happen. But you know what? It's the NFL, so we can manufacture something to talk about. Thank you very much. And we're going to get to a lot today. We're going to get to the all-quarter century team, I should say, some training camp storylines. But we start, gentlemen, with quarterbacks who can change their perception the most this season. And here's the crux of this discussion, all right? Like, it's easy to be like, who's about to be on the hot seat or who's about to glow up? This is kind of a combination of both. And, we want to take a look and just figure out, are there quarterbacks out there that, good or bad this year, could suddenly sweep away or change the way they're talked about, put themselves in a different category? Frank Schwab, I'll let you go first. When I say quarterback that can change their perception this season, you say?
I think, the one that jumps out to me that we talked about before the show, Jared Goff. I mean, look, Jared Goff right now is kind of that middle of the road quarterback. He's kind of settling into the Kirk Cousins zone. We're like, yeah, Jared Goff, he's fine, whatever. If he could go out and win one Super Bowl in Detroit, I think everything changes about him. I think all of a sudden that now we look back at his Rams days and say, oh, he took that team to the Super Bowl too. And now he's taken the Lions of all teams to the Super Bowl, maybe win one. I think that Jared Goff has the most to gain if he could just get there. Because if he never does, if this Lions team without Ben Johnson, without Aaron Glenn too, it doesn't affect him as much. If this Lions team never gets to a Super Bowl, he's going to kind of have this, oh yeah, Jared Goff, he was pretty good for a while. He's Jim Everett, like that kind of a career where, yeah, he played a long time and had some success, but we don't really remember him that well. If Jared Goff wins a Super Bowl in Detroit, their statue's going up. Like he's already beloved there. He's very popular in Detroit. It goes to a totally different level if he wins one, and his career arc just changes. We would remember the Rams days a lot more fondly. As weird as that sounds, like we'd be like, oh, that's right, that happened too, and we'll give him extra credit for that now. I think it's Jared Goff. I think he's the one guy who can really boost his kind of profile, his legacy almost this season.
I agree with that. First off, I think Jared Goff has always been part of that class of quarterbacks that we especially, I think, more associate with like the Shanahan-McVay tree guys. I always think of the Brock Purdy discourse we've had, Tua Tagovailoa in Miami for all those years, the quarterbacks that fit into these offenses that have always felt neat and tidy and very accessible and solvent for those guys. Ben Johnson, obviously not in that specific group, but looked at as one of the best weapons in terms of offensive play callers in the NFL. And so you combine that with the tenure of Sean McVay, and Jared has been that guy that's been, I always like a joke when we do the Hall of Fame discussions, there's the guys that are just the Hall of Very Good. And he's always felt like a Hall of Very Good quarterback that with that resume point, to go along with all the production, because we do this with a guy like Jalen Hurts all the time, who is on very few people's consensus list for top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL, but he's got the accomplishment, he's got these big moments, and there's no doubt that boosts the way that we view things in our public eye. Fitz, I would say for me, though, and this is caked in recency bias, shout out to your guys' colleague, Nate Tice, for re-injecting some Justin Herbert discourse back into the timeline, but Justin Herbert's been a guy that's your favorite film watcher's favorite quarterback. He's an alien of a prospect and always has been, but he's also got a bunch of great individual statistical accolades. He's been on some career trajectories in that regard that very few people can touch. He just doesn't really have the postseason arsenal to go along with it. Part of that comes with playing in the same division as Pat Mahomes, but if he's a guy that can all of a sudden go on the tear, be a part of a team that wins maybe a couple of playoff games or makes a little bit of a run, now that the defense is ironed out, now that maybe they've added more to the running game and beefed up the offensive line in an offense with Greg Roman that's always going to leave a little bit of desire in the passing concepts they instill, I think Justin Herbert can go from being this guy that's always somehow been a lightning rod despite his personality to someone who is universally respected and maybe not just the tape grinder's favorite quarterback.
I do agree. Like, look, Justin Herbert, I thought reinvented himself last year, and I give Jim Harbaugh a lot of credit for that. The whole like social media quarterback jokes were very kind of dumb, but also not entirely untrue. Like, where was kind of the proof of concept with Justin Herbert? Yeah, he had some great highlights. He did put up some good numbers, but he never really seemed like as good as people wanted him to be, in my mind. Last year, I thought he changed who he was. Became a much more efficient quarterback, a much more mistake-free quarterback. But then he undid a lot of that in the playoffs. Like, he was terrible in that game against the Texans. I still, to this day, don't know what the Chargers were doing in that game. The Chargers were such a better team by the end of the year than the Texans and got absolutely blown out. And then it kind of reverts to, oh, yeah, Justin Herbert. Like, so I agree with you. Like, if Justin Herbert can go out, put together get on the MVP ballots, basically, lead his team to maybe a division title over the mighty Chiefs, right? And then have some postseason success. All of a sudden, he'll validate everything else. I thought that he needed to validate some stuff and not just be, quote unquote, the social media quarterback. I thought he did a lot of that last year, but then the step back in the playoffs. That's what he's got to figure out this year and not have a step back at the end and not be the quarterback on the wrong end of Jacksonville coming back from 27-zip. And, these things that have kind of held Justin Herbert, in my mind anyway, back from getting in that, that top tier of, we got basically four guys right now. It's Lamar, it's Mahomes, it's Josh Allen, it's Burrow. Well, that can be a top five pretty easily if Justin Herbert takes that step.
I mean, but think of all the ifs you just stacked. If. I guess my question, and this leads to the whole topic of the conversation. The reason I agree with Justin Herbert is my challenge to Justin Herbert fanatics, and I get tape grinders love him, and I understand that he's a very good quarterback, but like, what's his signature win? And that's the big thing that, for me, at some point, I think we pick and choose when we want quarterbacks to be judged by signature wins. The number of times we take Lamar, for example, and sit there and say, well, hasn't won a Super Bowl, or wins the MVP, can't win a Super Bowl. But then with Justin Herbert, we're like, well, no, there's context to why he doesn't have the signature win. We can't have it both ways. Like, we can't sit here on one time and beg for context around Justin Herbert and then not beg for context around Lamar Jackson, for example. I mean, at some point, doesn't Justin Herbert have to have the signature moment that the whole world steps back and says, holy cow, I can't believe I just saw that? Like, don't we expect
honestly,
that?
Fitz, you know what Justin Herbert's signature moment was? It was that Sunday night game in the finale against the Raiders when he kept converting to fourth downs and doing this and that. And they lost that game to the Raiders, as you will remember. That's kind of his signature moment, isn't it, Gojo?
Yeah, I would agree. And I think we spent so much of the past administration focusing on the failings of Brandon Staley, right? When we looked at, that coach and that organization, there was an easy place to go with this now. And Frank, I think what you brought up about how last year looked and felt so different is one of those reminders that for all the ability that Justin Herbert had, and listen, he had great receivers there for a while that they had to, lop off when they made the transition. He wasn't working with nothing, but it was also the same Chargers offensive line problem that we've been dealing with my entire lifetime, where we feel like they get some talent, that talent gets hurt, and all of a sudden the turnstile begins anew. So now you've got an organization that really values that, the stability that Jim Harbaugh brings. You feel like all of a sudden the offense is starting to come together around. We'll see if they can go and continue to get quality play out of Mekhi Becton once he leaves the Philadelphia, career offensive line rehabilitation program. We'll see if Greg Roman can defy what we've seen in the past with Lamar Jackson and add elements to a passing attack that often felt like it would get stale in the second half of games last year. Ladd McConkey coming on the way they did certainly gives them a guy that feels like a legitimate number one. But no, Fitz, I mean, it's not, in my mind, it's not begging for context. It's just understanding that, like we've seen all across the board, winning is really hard for a lot of these guys in a lot of circumstances when they aren't totally right, but we can still look and see, hey, this player is really good. You know, no one's going to dispute that Joe Burrow was a lethal weapon last year, even though their defense couldn't stop a cold and ultimately couldn't get to where they want to go. So we all understand, hey, we can see when a guy is playing good, but also it is fair. And we got to this point last year with guys like Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, where it's, all right, at some point when we get to this point, you've accomplished everything else. It's okay to say a guy at this position on teams that are mature enough in their life cycle could and should be expected to get them into a deep postseason run. A Super Bowl is the last accomplishment left on the board for a guy like Lamar Jackson at this point. And so we get to points where it's okay to expect those things, even acknowledging it doesn't make them bad players not having accomplished them yet.
I know this is not a new take by any means, but I just wonder when we talk about Herbert, especially in that division, we talk about Allen, we talk about Jackson, if these guys are just Patrick Ewing, Charles Barkley. I mean, there's one guy sucking up all the championships in the AFC. Like that's going to be the problem when we get to the end. But Justin Herbert has a kind of a unique opportunity because he plays in the same division as Patrick Mahomes. If they go, and I think they could. I know I've said this before. Goodness knows I've said this before, but I think the Chargers could win that division. They have the talent to win that division. Whether they do it or not's a different deal. But if you could do something like that, all of a sudden we'd be saying, oh, Justin Herbert, there's a signature moment that Fitz was talking about.
Yeah, and by the way, joke's on you, Frank. I don't remember that signature moment at all against the Raiders because Mike got me too drunk. Okay, let me give you a quarterback from a different standpoint. Okay, and I'm going to go a little hot takey here for the boys, but let's see how this feels to you. Quarterbacks who can change their perception the most. After 1 year, we were enamored with CJ Stroud, like the best rookie season Frank has ever seen. Last year, he was fine, and there's a lot of reasons, again, a lot of context to why it was fine. Could you not argue that if this year, particularly against just a trash division, if the Texans struggle a little bit again, if CJ Stroud is only okay again, like I would say that the perception changes only because we were ready, Frank, to put him in the same category as the Mahomes, the Burrows, the Jacksons a year ago. If he has another okay year, I think it changes sort of the way we're couching the conversation about CJ Stroud moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, CJ Stroud, absolutely the best rookie quarterback I'd ever seen. A title he held for probably 1 year, unfortunately for him. But Jaden Daniels, hello. But yes, I do wonder, like we take that great rookie season, and he did take a step back last year in every way possible. Like he just wasn't the same quarterback. Now, I will say this. I almost put an asterisk on this because their offensive line was so bad, and maybe their offense coordinator was so bad. If they come back this year, I don't think our offensive line's any better. I look at that Texans team and I'm like, there's a lot of question marks here other than Nico Collins on that offense. Like, who's your receiver two? Who's your offensive line? Is your running game really that good? Is Joe Mixon still going to be that dude? Like, his efficiency is waning. So I don't know about CJ Stroud on this list. I will say it'd be a little disheartening if CJ Stroud takes another step back. We have to kind of reevaluate everything. I thought, hey, CJ Stroud is Johnny Unitas. My God, look at this rookie year. He's just going to keep getting better. Well, progress isn't always linear, right? He did take a step back last year, and for him to do it again, I think would be pretty disheartening to the Texans, regardless of all the issues going on around him.
Yeah, it is a good reminder that getting hit too often can undermine even the best quarterbacks that we've ever seen. And that there is no thing that we value more in the media than someone who can talk really well about the sport to us here. And the CJ Stroud offseason press tour from the prior season was one for the history books in terms of that. But no, I mean, a lot of pressure on him, a lot of pressure on Nick Caley, who is going to try and bring a little bit more of that Rams downhill inside running game over there. They drafted Ariante Irsay, who kind of fits into that big body dude, try and get thick on these guys. But ultimately, the play calling, all those things are going to have to try and overcome. Like, they need continuity. That was the worst thing that the offensive line did. I think it was less the individual failings and more the fact that they just couldn't settle in on any one group. If you're going to have a group that's not supremely talented, they need to at least be out there often enough to get all the benefits of continuity that help with that position so much.
Do you think they fixed that, though? Do you think they fixed that, though? Because I look at it like, I get Laramie Tunsil had his issues last year, a lot of penalties and whatnot. I don't think Cam Robinson's better. And the guys, Shaq Mason, they got rid of it. Who did they replace him with? Like, I mean, Ed Ingram, okay. I don't think that's an upgrade. I wonder, do you think the continuity of the line, maybe the group itself can overcome this? Because I look at the individual talent and I say, this line might be worse than last year somehow. And they were probably the worst offensive line in football.
Yeah, no, I think they settled in. When Jared Patterson got to center, things started to look a little bit better there. I thought the Juice Scruggs stuff from earlier in the season just did not look the way that they had hoped it would look. But talent-wise, no, you're right. I don't think this is a group that is, forget markedly better talent-wise, really better at all. And so it's going to be kind of an exercise in how much scheme can play a role in this. I mean, that's the other part of what we went through last year is we were so ready to crown, Bobby Slowick as the next great offensive innovator. And you can look at plenty of things in the terms of the way they organized their protections and structured a lot of that didn't help that group out along with that either. And so there are just so many competing factors. This goes all the way back to your point, Fitz, of why this stuff is so difficult is because everything that we talked about in the ecosystem with CJ Stroud looked similar to the way that it did the year before, but changed so much in ways that kind of became apparent as the season went along that success was going to be really hard to come by.
Yeah, and by the way, Slowick is a living, eating, breathing example of take the head coaching gig while your name's hot. Like, the thought of going back an extra year. Also, this is now 2 straight quarterbacks that I give a little nuance here, that we've talked a lot about their perception as it exists right now exists in part because they have offensive line issues in front of them. And that's going to be a recurring theme, because at some point, from 99% of quarterbacks, if you're not protecting them, they don't look like they can play worth a damn. Let me give you another name and see where you guys are on this one. Daniel Jones. All right, and here, I firmly believe Daniel Jones is going to be the day one starter for the Colts. So if Shane Steichen, who has won, he's won a lot of games for having a trash quarterback situation, is able to suddenly get something out of Daniel Jones, I think we have to look. I forget that the Colts were better than we give them credit for being. So now I'm looking at a Colts team that's been pretty good, that doesn't have a quarterback that they can trust. I think Daniel Jones wins the job. Can he not have a sort of, Sam Darnold resurgence if under Shane Steichen, they're able to maximize what he can do? Like, we've seen good enough from Daniel Jones. He could change perception, couldn't he, Mike?
I think so, just because this offense leans into all of the things that Daniel Jones has always done best, mainly just run the damn ball with dudes. So I think it's got an opportunity. I think where I ultimately fall a little bit short on this, and this is where I'd be proven wrong, is I think especially relative to the Sam Darnold comparison. Coming out of college, Sam Darnold was one of the most talented quarterback prospects that we had seen in a while. He was someone who you saw the flashes of ability that very few guys possess, and I just never thought Daniel Jones was that guy in terms of high-end ability. So I think you could get the best out of him without it looking anything close to what Sam Darnold went through last year, where that talent finally found a home with some of the best offensive talent and play calling in the NFL, and it gave us a 14-win season.
Yeah, I'll answer this 2 different ways. Could Daniel Jones change your perception of himself? Let's say the Colts go 12-5, win the division. I do think that division's more wide open than people give it credit for. I'll pick the Jaguars. If you want to pick the Colts, that's fine. You want to pick the Texans, that's fine. Yes, Daniel Jones could change his perception if he has a season like that. Do I think that's going to happen? No. I think we've seen Daniel Jones. Yes, of course, we're all going to. We didn't see this coming from Baker Mayfield. We didn't see this coming from Geno Smith. We didn't see this coming from Sam Darnold. I get it. It can happen, and he kind of fits that mold, but I don't know. I just kind of think we've maxed out on Daniel Jones. I will say, relative to the Baker thing too, the best Baker season from his time early in Cleveland was still better, I think, in terms of a pure passer than anything we saw from Daniel. The best Daniel Jones season that we saw was when Brian Daboll got there and they decided to line up under center and give the ball to Saquon Barkley in a season that ended in a playoff win. Well, lucky playoff win. That team was one of the. It caught every green light on the way to the playoffs, and then they paid Daniel Jones $160 million or whatever it was. We were like, oh, Daniel Jones is. Well, no, not really. I think this is just who Daniel Jones is. Could he change that if the Colts have a ridiculous year? Like you said, Fitz. We've talked about that before on the pod. The Colts were better last year than anybody remembers. They were 8-9, with the 31st best passer rating in the NFL as a team. They had zero quarterback play and still went 8-9. Could Daniel Jones be a little bit better than that and get them to the playoffs? Yes, sure. But I just don't. I don't see a scenario where we're sitting here next year talking about Daniel Jones the way we're talking about Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, Geno, all those guys.
I don't know that I necessarily see that scenario, but I do believe that Shane Steichen has enough history in tailoring offenses around people that do similar things to Daniel Jones. That Daniel Jones is going to have I think he's going to start and have a better season than people expect. the question for me is going to be to go back to the big fat guys. Like, is the offensive line what it looked like the last year and a half, or is the offensive line what it looked like a couple of years ago? I like, if that offensive line is what we thought it was a couple of years ago, the Colts take a big leap forward to me.
It could be. They lost some dudes. They lost some dudes on that offensive line. And the Colts do feel like this kind of house of cards thing where, yeah, they went 8-9, like I said, but are they that good? Like they never seem like an 8-win team. Like, what's their strength? Like, it's definitely not really defense. Their defense is fine, I guess. Jonathan Taylor's awesome on Wisconsin, but I just, what does this team really do well? Like, it would shock me if they won 11, 12 games especially with Daniel Jones under center.
What about Sam Darnold? You guys have mentioned him a couple of times. He goes to Seattle now where he replaces Geno Smith. And I mean, we talk about perception, I guess, in the ways that he could change perception, Mike. Like, if he goes to Seattle and has another good year, then don't we have to take we have to take the training wheels off the takes on Sam Darnold at that point, don't we?
Yeah, like, listen, I think he did the bulk of his career renaissance washing last year. Obviously, the last couple of games, he's talked about it and been open about the fact that undid a lot of the goodwill. And for so many people, it was same old Sam after that. So, yes, going in and doing it outside of the context of an offense that most of us look at as bumper bowling for quarterbacks, yeah, I think would go a long way in people maybe absolving him of the last couple of games and seeing, quite honestly, the very understandable excuses that, by the way, Minnesota went out and remedied of their interior offensive line, the pass protection at the end of the season that made it a lot more difficult to do what they wanted to do with Sam Darnold. Again, not to make excuses for all these guys, but there were other problems at the end of the year that led to Minnesota crashing and burning that weren't Sam Darnold. And so I do think maybe that would start to get talked about a little bit more if all of a sudden they have early success in Seattle.
I've never really seen a story like Sam Darnold as far as he was awesome for 16 games. Like, he really was. Like, he got on MVP ballots. He was, I think, 7th in the MVP voting. He was legitimately that good, where you could talk about him in the conversation of an MVP. And then, like you said, he has 2 bad games, and everybody's like, "Yep, he stinks." Like, it's stunning to me how we have just erased the first 90% of last season because he played poorly in 2 games. One against a 15-2 Lions team. The other against a Rams team that was playing really well on defense at the end of the year with an offensive line with the Vikings, which just couldn't block in that game. Like, they were terrible in that game. I don't put that all in Sam Darnold's lap. Pro Football Focus, just for one data point. It's only one data point. I was just curious. Like, they rank their quarterbacks. I'm like, Seattle, they obviously made the decision. We're going to trade Geno. We're going to bring in Sam Darnold. They had Geno ranked as the 10th best quarterback, and Sam Darnold ranked as the 26th best quarterback in the NFL. I was like, what are we doing here? Like, what? There's really that big of a gap between these two guys because Sam Darnold had 2 bad games? Sam Darnold's a really young guy. He was one of the younger guys in his draft class. He had what I thought was really a breakout season last year. Do I think Sam Darnold is a top 10 quarterback going forward? No, but I don't think he's 26th either. I think, and he does, but he does. He now needs to prove himself again, which is kind of crazy after having such a good year that it seems like the entire world, other than maybe the Seattle front office, is skeptical that he can do this again. And it's all because of 2 games. Had he just been okay in those last 2 games, I think we'd have a totally different perception of Sam Darnold. It's crazy to me. The whole arc of the Sam Darnold story is kind of wild that he undid basically everything with 2 bad games.
And the fact that he is still, to your point, 28 years old at the end of all of this. Like, that continues
7
to
years
blow
younger
my
than
mind.
Geno. Yeah.
I don't understand. Yeah, I mean, and that's a huge part of that conversation. But yeah, when you brought that up, I had to go back and look and check again. And I cannot believe Sam Darnold was born in 1997. What is going on?
But, guys, but this is all because currently in the NFL, for so many people, whether it's media or fans that are consuming it, we live in an I told you so society. So, like, people don't want to step back and root for a player or even root against a player halftime. People want to root for their preconceived notions of a player. So if you have decided that Josh Allen isn't good enough to get over the hump against the Chiefs, every time he loses to the Chiefs, you stand up and say, well, I told you so. Every time Lamar has a bad game in the playoffs, I told you so. Sam Darnold is the living, eating, breathing example of confirmation bias in the way we cover quarterbacks. Like, the 14-3 season no longer matters. It's just, I told you so. He sucks, and he sucked again here, so now he has to suck forever, Mike.
I will say, if I could give the more favorable read, it would be a reminder that trust is gained in drops and lost in buckets. And Sam Darnold had not put a lot of drops into that bucket during his time in New York with the Jets. And now all of a sudden, when you put a few here and then kick them over, because right, wrong, or indifferent, like we always talk about this, we over-index on primetime games, on late games at the end of the season, on playoff games, because more people are watching those all at once than the rest of us skimming the red zone. So they tend to more often and more fully inform our opinion just because there's more casual eyeballs on that situation. So it doesn't make it any better. I'm sure there is still some confirmation bias in there, but it's also like this, like we talked about before with Daniel Jones too. There's a full body of work already under the hood for some of these guys. It's not like guys that started a couple of games and got their chance a year late. These are multi-year starters in the NFL where we do have some body of work on who you've been.
But Mike, if Sam Darnold had not melted down at the end of the regular season, and then the Vikings would have paid him a huge sum of money, do you not believe that there would have been a whole group of people that watched that contract go out and say, well, Sam Darnold's not worth that. It was 1 year. Like, no matter what, if you decided before Sam Darnold started that season that he sucked, there was nothing that was going to happen last year. Like, I genuinely believe Sam Darnold could have taken him all the way to the Super Bowl, and people would still look at it and be like, 1 year wonder, you can't pay the guy, he sucks. Like, that's the way we talk about everything.
Means you got a good coach.
Did have a good coach. And I just, and it's Sam Darnold, it complicates matters because you talked about, he didn't build up a lot of trust. But it was with the Jets, who are basically a tire fire, and the Carolina Panthers, who aren't any better. It's like, okay, well, I kind of give him a pass. I like Sam Darnold. I think Sam Darnold is going to do pretty well in Seattle. I don't know. Maybe I'm just holding on to this. I was trashing Sam Darnold a year ago, saying, what are we doing here? He's going to start 2 games and then they're going to go JJ McCarthy. Obviously that changed with the McCarthy injury, but I was convinced by the end of the year. I thought Sam Darnold was playing really good, sound football. He eliminated a lot of the stuff that kind of, made him bad. It made him a bust in New York, and it didn't work out in Carolina. I thought he transformed who he was as a quarterback. And just because he had a good coach, you carry on those lessons, I think. You're with Kyle Shanahan for 1 year as a backup. You learn a lot of stuff. You're in that situation in Minnesota, which is awesome. I think you carry that on to Seattle. I think Sam Darnold's a lot better than people are giving him credit for. That's basically my only thing. But to the point of our exercise right now, if he goes out and he stinks again, like he did the last 2 games, we're just going to trash Sam Darnold. We're just going to say, "I'll see. Yep, that was just a fluke. Those first 16 games of the 2024 season."
Yeah, I'm saying, I guess for posterity, I also enjoy Sam Darnold as a quarterback. He is talented and at times inconsistent in certain moments in a way that makes football really fun, but the high-end talent is some rare stuff. And so I hope it works out. And this goes back to the kind of the same ecosystem conversations we've had of now he's going to a place that's got a new coordinator that's been trying to remake their offensive line over the last couple of years in a group that was a major culprit. Like, that's one of the big worries, is that's what undid Sam Darnold at the end of last season. In part was the Vikings couldn't block anyone up front, and now he's going to a Seattle team where part of what changed the conversation around Geno Smith, who I think is a damn good quarterback, is the fact that he was getting hit basically nonstop last year behind an offensive line and with a coordinator that didn't help him much in scheming that up.